Biden's job rating sits at just 43%. It's about where it's been since the withdrawal from Afghanistan. 53% disapprove. A full 68% of voters, including 43% of Democrats now, which is twice what it was in 2020, say they are concerned that Biden does not have the necessary mental and physical health to be president.
The 2024 Republican presidential primary field is taking shape. The battle lines are becoming clearer, and so is the field of candidates.
Is the odds-on favorites, if you look at the polling, still Trump versus Biden?
That seems to be it, but it's just way too early to tell.
I'm more angry now, and I'm more committed now than I ever was.
Big challenge for these candidates is going to be how do they navigate Donald Trump? And how do they navigate Ron DeSantis?
You and I have a rendezvous with destiny.
Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program, fellas. What a week, huh? We're right into it again.
I mean, we're back into the mess. I think right off the top, you cannot stress enough, 70% of voters don't think Joe Biden is mentally and physically capable to be president. 70% of voters.
Nearly half of Democrats. And we're talking about mental and physical capability here. It's not like, do you agree with his position on some policy? It's like, I don't think he can do the job. These are Democrats.
Right. I mean, it just goes to show you can't hide it.
No.
Right? I mean, as much as everyone in the media has attempted to talk about something else here, it's just plain for everybody to see. Democrats agree. Republicans agree. Independents agree. This dude ain't got it.
Yeah, but you know what? Devil's advocate here. They made Fetterman a senator.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's not that they're not going to vote for him.
Right, exactly. And I don't want everybody who's listening to this to be like, oh, well, it's done. We're going to win 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, we made Fetterman a senator. And they said his approval sits at 43, which is where it was the Afghan withdrawal. Then we didn't have the best midterm.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just want to say it. I mean, we still got a long way to go.
Well, I think there are several numbers that you cannot ignore.
Yeah.
Out of this. The 68% of people who don't think that the guy can do the gig is a pretty significant gig. But as you said, if you're going to vote for John Fetterman, those 43% of Democrats are going to come back on board anyway.
Yeah, I think it's become pretty clear over the past, half a year at least, that being mentally and physically capable is not a prerequisite for a Democrat candidate. Like, you've had Fetterman, Feinstein, who I don't know what the situation is on her. Like, is she currently considered living or not? She's like a thorn in the side for Democrats, which is good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this is a senator for like one of the most populous states in the country who's on life support, essentially. Like, no one knows. She doesn't know where multiple times she's given incorrect answers when they ask her, like, oh, where have you been? When she took like 3 or 4 months off, she's like, I've been in my office working. and like, her aides just like have to grab her and run away. But that's the thing, is it has hit that level. We are at that low a level in this country where we expect so little from the folks in elected office.
It's true. So here are the two other numbers. The other number is that Kamala Harris's net negative 17 rating is the lowest of any vice president in their polls history.
Boy, that surprises me, because she's done such a terrific job, and she's so clear with the things that she says.
Yeah. You know what I noticed? I think it was Emily's List. Somebody announced. I saw the ad over the weekend when I was watching some of the news shows. They're running like pro Kamala ads now.
Yeah.
Have you seen this? Has anybody seen these ads?
Are you serious?
No, there's some huge IE to try to change the fact that she's the least popular vice president in America's history.
Well, it sounds like it's working.
Well, it's just like lighting money on fire.
Well, I wonder if the Biden folks are threatened by that. Because they're like, do they think we're not going to make it? Are they trying to swoop in and take this?
I'm sure that's of some concern.
Because like I've said many times, the Biden and Kamala people do not like each other. That rift was never mended after the primary.
Yeah, she called him a racist. So.
I mean, you really don't go back from there.
Well, I mean, look, if 68% of people think that he's not like mentally competent to actually do the job, and she says vice president, she's like, well,
I'm physically capable.
Got to do a little work. Got to do a little work here. The third number, and this is where I think this gets super uncomfortable for Republicans, but it's come up time and time again, is that in the general election matchups, in this same NBC poll that had enormous unpopularity and unfitness to do the job, Biden's up 49-45 over Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unconscionable to me to think You can put that kind of disapproval coupled with that number of Democrats who believe that he literally cannot do the job.
Even worse, in the the subset of the electorate that has a unfavorable opinion of Biden's job performance, like somewhat unfavorable, Biden leads Trump by double digits within that cohort, which is not good.
I have a question. Do you think that gap can be made up by just an endless bombardment of negative ads? Of just how it's become more apparent that this is a very crooked individual, just endless, like just a race to the bottom.
I think that Trump has the ability to gain some from where he's at by consolidation of the Republican electorate. This happens in primaries all the time, both on the Democratic side and the Republican side, where you have the height of a primary. People go to their camps and they get so committed to their camps that they're like, if I don't get my guy, I'm never going to vote for the other guy. Over summer and fall, that changes and people reconsolidate at somewhat. So he's going to get some bump. But we're getting a pretty good idea of what Trump's ceiling is here. And I'm not wild about it, to be honest, as an operative. I'm not wild about it. I mean, to give you a general election matchup comparison, NBC also polled Biden DeSantis that had him tied at 47 a pop. Now, statistically, that's in the margin of error. We're all talking same kind of numbers here. But you're beginning to see the ceiling. I don't know if it's the indictments or just the last like 6 years of politics. You're beginning to see what an independent ceiling would look like for Donald Trump. And like that is something that we all need to be cognizant of. I do think he can grow. I do think the consolidation can happen. But these are the kind of things that voters are going to have to think about as we get closer to Iowa.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is the dynamic of the 2016 election, where Hillary Clinton is probably one of the most unpopular humans to walk the face of the earth.
Right.
And Donald Trump was an unknown stock. Like when he made that famous line where he was like, what do you have to lose? A lot of people agreed with him. They were like, well, I know I don't like her. She's incredibly corrupt. I don't know where this guy will lead, but I'm not happy with the way things have gone for me.
Yeah.
And you had a huge number of people who felt like that way and shocked the world. He's not an unknown commodity anymore.
Right.
What I have difficulty reconciling is, in my opinion, his presidency was incredible. You had the economy just exploding, right? Geopolitically, things were fantastic. America had a very strong, position in the world. Domestic energy production was crushing it. I don't see, like, I feel such rage almost for the media narratives, which were all lies, the Russiagate, all this stuff that was just to taint half this country's opinion, right? To make them believe that, okay, the economy's great. Personally, I'm doing wonderful. I hate the people in charge. I want to change,
Yeah, I mean, all that's fine. I mean, sure, there were a lot of things that were unfair to Donald Trump. It doesn't change what reality is now in people's opinion of him. He has to change their opinions of him. My concern is, and I missed the La Savita interview you guys had, which I thought was great. And Chris is a great guy, obviously, and he's a great operative. The one thing that struck me is, like, when you got to the end of the interview and you asked him, thrill, victory, agony, and defeat, and he said, you learn so much more from your defeats than you do from your victories.
And they never admitted defeat.
Donald Trump has learned nothing from 2020.
Yeah.
That's my concern. Because I look at those numbers and I'm like, yeah, it is concerning. And the independent number is extremely concerning. I look at places like Georgia and Arizona, and it's very, very, very concerning.
Yep.
If you could change one thing, Donald Trump, what would it be? And what does he say? I would change nothing. I regret nothing. In fact, they even asked him, like, should we ballot harvest and stuff? And he said, no, I have all the votes I need. Mm-hmm. And so if you're operating in 2024 that you did everything right in 2020, you're going to lose. You just are going to lose if you're Donald Trump based on these numbers and what happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, if the answer about not ballot harvesting, that I've got everything I need, that shows that he hasn't learned the lesson from 2020 when he let all these states just willy-nilly change the rules without pushing back from a federal level or from his campaign or anything.
In his defense, dude,
during the summer.
They did file some challenges to some of that stuff.
Yeah, but they could have done a lot more.
But even more than what happened is, like, This stuff happens in politics all the time. You have to change your tactics based on the reality of what the battle is.
You can never run the same tactics for this next campaign that you ran for the last campaign.
Yes.
It's a losing recipe. But
if it didn't work, which I think is a perfect way.
Even if it works, you might have to change because the electorate changes, because because the way they consume information changes. And I'll say you made a really good point a second ago, which was that in 2016, Trump was fresh, Hillary was old, and Trump had this image with center of the road voters and even Democrats that maybe he'll do something different. We're not turned off by him, or at least we're not so motivated to go vote for Hillary Clinton that we are going to go out to vote for her and against Trump. Now today, these Democrat voters, these center like left, center right voters are so motivated to turn out to vote against Donald Trump. It really works. It really works in the Dems' favor. So Democrats really want Trump to run against us. There was a story, I don't know if you guys saw this, Jonathan Allen, NBC, basically with Democrats suggesting that Trump is going to be harder to beat than previously alleged, right? That all of a sudden Trump's really tough to beat. I would just caution everybody listening to this show to just keep a clear eye out for anything that you're seeing from broadcast and mainstream media that suggests that Trump is stronger against Democrats than he actually is, because that is Democrat spin trying to lull you into thinking.
Oh, they love the false flag thing because a perfect example of that is the last few weeks we've had stories basically printed from the administration in Axios, like whatever they wanted, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically telling you the inside of what it looks like. And we had another one here over the last couple of days. There was Biden's 2024 vision, play 2020 again. Mm-hmm. The headline of that captures what we have been talking about, I think, for like the last 6-7 months, which is that this administration believes that they have a very flawed candidate, that the American people are, one, distrustful of what's been going on, but two, just don't think he can do the job. Like, they see what we see. But they also think it doesn't matter if they're running against Donald Trump. And it's like the 2020 vision all over again. Here's a couple of highlights from the lead. President Biden is betting that 2024 voters will prefer continuity over Republican disruption, so will ask for a second term by emphasizing what he did in the first and campaigning on largely the same proposal he ran in 2020.
Can I stop right there?
Yeah.
I think right there says the problem for Biden in a nutshell. It says he's going to ask for a second term by emphasizing what he did in his first. Nothing good. Accomplished none of his policy proposals, which is why, and campaigning on largely the same proposals he ran on in 2020. He didn't accomplish anything that he promised these voters, especially the young voters who he tricked into voting for him. None of them have gotten what they signed up for, right? And at the same time, how is he going to run on what he has accomplished? It's been disaster after disaster.
I think
whether it's like Afghanistan,
totally,
whether it's been inflation, it's been like hell on earth for American voters for the past few years.
So let me read through this, because what they're doing is laying out what his campaign proposals are going to be. And if you notice, if you look through it, it's nothing that you haven't heard or experienced over the last 2 years. Everything. Which tells me that their view is don't make any new news. Don't do anything new. Don't try to make any controversial discussions. Don't try to fix anything. Don't try to do anything, because if we run on who we are, you're going to lock down the far left for Joe Biden, which was his biggest problem going into 2020. The independents, the center left and the center right, are going to be dictated far more by his opposition than it is to him, because they know if your job as a campaign strategist was to try to figure out how to get Joe Biden to 51, you would never look at the body of work that you're doing and try to re-emphasize it and say that's the best way to do it, unless you believed that your opposition was so fundamentally flawed that you could keep them under 50 just by virtue of not making any new news yourself. And that I think is the headline here. The combination of the NBC poll and this Axios story tells you everything you need to know about how Democrats see the world. The Jonathan Allen story, all these other things. They're an attempt to try to like avert the eyes to something else other than what is quite an obvious
and I think what's
strategic decision.
Always important to mention when you mention Jonathan Allen is the guy who worked for Democrat super PACs. He's a Democrat operative who's been hired by the media.
Well, I think he's
he's a dear friend of Ash Brooks. He worked at a Dem super PAC. That's a fact.
He wrote a pretty damn good book about Hillary's campaign too. By the way, that was absolutely
very tough,
devastating.
Very tough. But I think I really think that when they say they're replicating the 2020 playbook, remember the 2020 playbook for Joe Biden was in his basement. He didn't do anything, and now he's going to be running from hospice. I mean, he literally is going to be the closest president we have ever had to the other side of the grass, running for reelection, and Democrats are going to straight face like he's capable of doing the job for 4 more years.
I mean, look at some of this stuff. Finish the job is what he's saying. He wants to talk about abortion rights. He wants to talk about gun control. None of this stuff that he's talking about is directed towards the center of the electorate, which he would need to win. It's all directed to keep the base satisfied.
It's also, by the way, the thing that a 95-year-old person says when they're facing the end of their life. Finish the job. Well done, good and faithful servant. Like you're about to see the other side in some way, and it's like,
But I think this is so revealing, guys. I think that the combination of these two things are these are not dumb people. They win elections when they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And when they're looking at 68% of voters that say that Biden does not have the necessary mental and physical health to be president, 68? Mm-hmm. What else polls at 68%?
Right. And that's,
I mean, honestly, is there like just Christmas? Is that 60? I don't think so.
I can't think of pretty much anything that polls.
That's just unbelievable.
Well, let me tell you something that polls at 68%. Recent poll of Republicans that said they don't want to hear Donald Trump talking about how the 2020 election was stolen from him.
It's a great point.
Right? That like what Biden's doing here is he's going to stand pat and wait for Donald Trump to implode. And if you've seen any of the interviews he's done since this indictment on the documents thing, the Brett Baer thing, good. It was horrific.
That was not good.
It was horrific. If I'm his lawyer,
part one was really not good.
If I'm his lawyer, I am drinking a whole bottle of bourbon every night.
Yeah.
Because this guy can't help but like talk about things he shouldn't talk about.
But at the same time, you look at the polls, and Trump's, according to the same NBC poll, Trump's at 51.
Right.
DeSantis 22, Pence 7, Christie 5, Haley 4, Ramaswamy 3, Tim Scott 3, Asa Hutchinson 2.
Right.
Something's not getting through. And I think, look, we've got a lot of time here, but I'm a little bit surprised that nobody's kind of putting 2 and 2 together on any of these things yet to say, like, I love Trump. Trump was terrific. He had a great presidency. But with all of this water that he's carrying on all of these various things, some of which are very much not his fault, some of which are his fault, all of it amounts to a less than ideal situation against a incumbent president who cannot make his own case to be reelected. Mm-hmm. I mean, his entire case to be reelected president of the United States, guys, think about this. Mm-hmm. An incumbent president, his entire case is that I'm not that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
That is it. That's and like the whole article is. It's just the 2020 playbook.
But I think you're dealing with a couple of issues here. I think number one, you have a Republican primary electorate that's been primed. Like the pump has been primed based on 2 things. Number one, every poll in 2016 said he was going to get boat raced by Hillary Clinton, and then he won. Right? So I think they look at a lot of the polls and all this sort of stuff, and they don't believe him because they were wrong before. They've been wrong so many times since that, none of it really matters to them. I think also number two, like the first big investigation of Donald Trump was Russiagate, and it went on for 3 years and it was completely fucking false. And so for all these Republican primary voters, they look at the body of work from the Justice Department, the FBI, and the intel community, and the Democrats on TV every night being utterly wrong about what Donald Trump did. And I think that has inoculated him a lot of ways in
It has.
all this stuff. So every voter just throws up their hands. They're like, well, all of this is fake. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, look, the reason you listen to the Ruthless Variety program is because you get a little more insight than that.
Yeah.
Right? And I guess my point is, I don't think we're there yet, and I think there's a long way to go in Iowa caucus campaigning and New Hampshire primary campaigning and everything else that ultimately will shape where we land here. But don't be in the protest vote situation. Like, you got to look at some of this stuff.
I would hope so.
And if it's not DeSantis that's your cup of tea, there's a lot of other talent out there, none of which is polling more than 7%. Christie. Seems to me like there's a plenty of discussion to go.
And if Donald Trump's your guy, you should tell him he should come on the Ruthless Variety program.
Yeah.
I think we need the big man because I want to know the answer. I want to know what he actually going to do different than 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's a fair question. You can't just sit there and say, I did everything right and everything is unfair and I'm going to win. You can't reconcile those things.
Well, it was one of the questions I was asking Chris, right?
Right.
Which was, a lot of us have gotten the feeling over the years that Trump is more committed to Trump than he is to the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Fair or not. Fair or not. And, like, how do you sort of reconcile? And he couldn't really answer that. And that was the one thing that he wasn't completely transparent.
There's only one person who can really answer that, and that's Donald Trump.
And it's Donald, because he's not going to put himself, obviously, as a trusted advisor in a position where he's speaking for his boss on that. So I get what he's thought. I get why he dodged it. But I'm just saying that is a question that if you don't like where this country is going and Joe Biden is going and where Democrats have been consolidating vote margins for people like Fetterman, don't think for a second they're not going to consolidate it against with Joe Biden.
Right.
And the one way they're doing that, there's one way. One way. Right now it's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And it is the key question, because we cannot forget that Donald Trump did post the second best popular vote total in election day history of this country in 2020. You cannot forget that. 74 million votes is a hell of a lot of votes. And that is why this is the key question, is how do you stop more Democrats from voting for Joe Biden? We know they're not motivated to vote for Joe Biden. The polling shows us that. Your intuition tells you that.
Yep.
That Joe Biden's not doing anything. He's an invalid.
And now we know. I mean, they just told us in Axios, which they've been reading out their inside thoughts for the last 3 months.
Right.
They've told us.
Right. We know that their strategy is to run against Donald Trump because they know that he motivates their voters more than their candidate ever could.
Yeah.
And how do we as Republicans post another 74 million vote day on election day in 2024? I think that's the key question.
Yeah.
And how do we prevent Democrats from getting one more than that?
Very, very well said. Well, listen, we got a big show ahead of you. We got a good guest, Carol Roth. She's been on the program before. She's got a new book out that we're going to be discussing. We've got our merch going, Michael.
Yeah, I mean, the merch is going great. We got the charges.
Seems like it's going really great.
I mean,
gangbusters.
I'm like literally head to toe. I got the hat.
Yeah, you are.
You know, folks, the fleece is wonderful. Loving the fleece. You've done a wonderful job.
Did you get the Dunkin' Banana hammock too?
Sadly, no. I got the Smug 2024 hat. You have to,
looks good.
Support the campaign.
Handsome looking.
That's store.ruthlesspodcast.com. Great subdomain.
Yeah.
Also, we'd be remiss for our many listeners, hit the YouTube.
Yeah.
Ruthless is now on YouTube in video. Stunning 1080p 4K video.
Stunning 1080K.
It's amazing. We've gotten lots of great comments. I love
for your
seeing all the
visual
great
enjoyment.
and there's some extra treats on there that you won't even find on the podcast. So
yeah. Oh, it's good stuff.
Go there and hit that subscribe.
All right, so we got to get into the Hunter Biden thing. And we covered last week the guilty plea and the tax evasion and the gun charge and how that didn't seem like it totally fit in comparison to what people similarly situated have been charged with and faced in terms of. But there's more.
Of course.
But wait, there's more.
Always.
Yeah, so last week, GOP lawmakers released transcripts from we got two.
Is this the Comer Committee?
Yeah, this is the two IRS whistleblowers.
Okay.
Basically alleging that the Justice Department shut down these investigations.
Can I pause you on that? Is that the thing that Grassi was talking to us about? Like, 8 months ago?
Forever ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, got
Yeah,
it.
so,
Okay.
so the main thrust of this thing, and this is from ABC News, is the release of a WhatsApp message between Hunter Biden and this Chinese businessman where he says, this is a text from Hunter Biden to the Chinese guy, I am sitting here with my father, and we would like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled. Tell the director that I would like to resolve this now before it gets out of hand. And now means tonight. And Z, this is Z, the guy, if I get a call or a text from anyone involved in this other than you, Zhang, or the chairman, I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge that you will regret not following my direction, I am sitting here waiting for the call with my father.
I mean,
what the
wow.
It does not get any more clear cut.
It's like, excuse me, if anybody's listening, I am trying to solicit a bribe. FBI, if you're listening.
I mean, you can't. So, all right. So Z is the Chinese businessman.
Yeah.
And it seems, first of all, I can't believe there's a single human being that would put that kind of thing in writing.
Well, that's the thing. Well, Hunter's the smartest guy Joe Biden has met. He puts like a criminal conspiracy in writing and sends it overseas.
Right.
So wait, hold on. I actually have to decipher a bunch of things here, guys, because there's multiple things happening. There's one that you've got whatever the facts are, which we're finding out now thanks to Jamie Comer and Chuck Grassley, or two, the media's version of what the facts are. And then there's three, you got a bunch of like tinfoil hat of what they want the facts to be. And so like our job is to try to sort through this. In order to do some of it, we need to read some mainstream media things to see how they're characterizing this, which is fucking bonkers.
Yeah.
If you look at it. But so this is ABC. The Justice Department's 5-year probe into the Hunter Biden lurched toward a conclusion this week with an announcement of a plea deal that will likely allow President Joe Biden's 53-year-old son to avoid prison. That was a statement of fact. Congratulations. Congratulations. Other than maybe the conclusion part, which I don't know and they don't know. Second, but that hasn't stopped congressional Republicans.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
From leveling fresh accusations of corruption against the president and his family. Leveling. Okay, so this is either true or it's not, what you just read.
Right.
And according to ABC, they're not ready to commit to that.
No.
They're not. They're. This is a he said, she said game.
They're like, listen, the Treasury Department has shown money from China being wired to multiple Biden family members.
They're like alleged Republicans alleged.
Not quite sure.
And then you've got in writing, in his own words, Hunter Biden being like, I am in the room. Send me the monies. The bribe must happen now. I'm upset you have not sent the bribes.
But to be fair, this is exactly how ABC handled the Russia probe.
But I'm interested in your take on this, Smash, because I mean, look, you deal with these folks all the time. In order to say leveling fresh accusations of corruption, in order to say that leveling, you need to, as a prerequisite, cast some doubt as to whether or not that text is actually real.
Well, that's the whole point of the story, and this is sort of service that the mainstream media provides Democrats that they don't provide Republicans. If Republicans like shed to light facts, they're constantly questioned, which you could argue that's the media's role, is to question somebody's argument. But if the Democrats surface facts, it's all of a sudden damning evidence against the Republicans.
It is true.
Lead the news.
What you just said is 100% true.
Right.
It's never the process of the argument. It's always just this is what the facts are.
It's only process if it's a Republican.
So here's the second sentence. GOP lawmakers on Thursday released transcripts from 2 IRS whistleblowers who together complained in April that the Justice Department sabotaged investigators' efforts. That's what you were covering.
Right.
So somehow, I guess they're questioning the authenticity of the whistleblower in addition to...
I don't remember them questioning Vindman. I don't remember them questioning any of these people who just had a bunch of fake bullshit.
When the Today Show was rolling out the gang raper stories, that was
Julie Swetnick.
That was just a statement of fact.
She went on national television, as I recall.
The latest whistleblower allegations follow a string of investigative efforts by a GOP-led House Oversight Committee and its chairman, James Comer, that have thus far, this is my favorite, yielded few meaningful results.
Yeah.
Okay, so if that statement is true, that it is a not worth discussion part that there were 9 Biden family members paid by the Chinese, right? There would no other way we would know that unless that committee produced it. That's not a meaningful result, evidently.
No, they downplay that.
The existence of whistleblowers within the IRS is not apparently a meaningful result of any kind. And this fucking text message.
I mean, I can't get over it.
Blows the doors off of any sort of discussion. I mean, this is the kind of text message, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic because I think there are probably a lot that goes into this, and you never know, as evidenced by Russiagate and what fair-minded people ultimately thought at the beginning and then knew at the end. There's a process for all of this. But if you just look at that text, if there's anything in Trump's career that ever had that kind of thing in text to anyone,
right?
Can you imagine?
We would be in a very different planet.
Can you imagine if Don Jr. had done something like this?
No.
It would lead the news for months. They would have investigations into investigations, and they would talk about nothing else.
But I think this is that damning because I've gotten really tired of the whole can you imagine if Trump did this or Don Jr. did this? It's like, we're going to be saying, can you imagine this 20 years from now when Democrats have made it illegal to be a Republican, right?
We're going to be walking down to the salt mines being like, imagine if situations were reversed.
This investigation needs to lead to charges against Joe Biden. It's like black and white. I will make certain that between the man sitting next to me and every person he knows and my ability to forever hold a grudge that you will regret not following my direction. He's saying, give me the money or me and my father will make your life a living hell.
The press will never hold Democrats accountable. It's axiomatic.
Which is why we got
Write it down. Remember it. The press will never hold Democrats accountable. Democrats are bad for American government because the press will never do their jobs.
Go ahead.
I have one other proving point on this. There's a sitting United States senator. His name is John Tester. He's won the easiest elections that anybody from Montana could ever run. He literally pulled out his crank and showed it to a reporter.
What?
Yeah, that came out today. That came out today.
I'm not kidding.
I've been under a rock.
And his press secretary was like, "Can the senator's penis be off the record?" That was an exact quote.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you. And do you know where that vignette went? It wasn't on the front page of the paper above the fold war type. It was in a book
that the journal wrote to sell. So they released it only to get sizzle on the book sale.
And the guy, the journal, is a great writer.
I don't know about that.
He's objectively.
He didn't tell the American people about this. How's he doing his job as a journalist?
He's a gifted writer,
guys.
But my point is,
who's the writer?
Ben Terrace.
Wow.
Yeah, Ben. But he gets a lot of color. Clearly,
gifted writer. But look, I'm going to set Hunter aside for a moment because I've got a lot of questions about what you just brought up. He exposed himself to a reporter.
Apparently,
a female reporter.
No, it was to Terrace.
Yeah.
He pulled his dick out to Ben Terrace.
They were out in some a field.
Was he taking a pee?
Yeah.
And he pulls it out right in front of the guy, and then his press secretary is like, "Can the senator's penis be off the record?" It's like, and of course, the reporter does not report this at the time of
Hold on, who was the press secretary? Do we have any note on that?
I didn't see the
male or female. That makes a difference.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't considered that.
That makes a difference.
Again,
what kind of workplace environment is that?
Democrats get away with everything.
Yeah, maybe the soil,
as long as we let them,
guys. Maybe the soil was a little low in ammonia. Okay, was it soybean fields?
Well, he's got 3 fingers.
Yeah,
too.
My point
is,
grabbing
that thing.
There's a real wreck of a. I mean, that whole process must have been something to behold.
My whole point with this, and with the Hunter thing is, Dems get away with it because we let them. Okay, like the scholars among our side, the think tank types are like, we have to respect norms. How dare you say you're going to jail Hillary Clinton? Hold them accountable. Lock them all up.
I agree with
They're after our people. They're locking our folks up.
I agree with you. Republicans need to do everything we can to hold Democrats accountable. We need to be better.
Well, I think that's what James Comer's doing.
However, it is what Jamie Comer's doing. However, the press needs to hold them accountable too. I mean, because there are voters who just like. They still watch the news. They still get their information from major broadcast networks, and they're getting bullshit.
Yeah, hold on though, because I think there might be a little bit of subtext here. The statement from Hunter's attorney.
Okay, back to Hunter Biden.
Thank you for keeping us
any verifiable words or actions of my client in the midst of a horrible addiction are solely his own and have no connection to anyone in his family. So what I think that is, in the subtext here in the story, where like everything is sort of qualified, Holmes, like you were saying earlier, you know, like Republicans allege and all this sort of thing. I think the subtext there is like, maybe Hunter Biden was just on crack and Joe Biden wasn't actually in the room, right? Like he's sending this text to flex and be like, I'm right here next to my father. If you don't wire this money right now, we're going to tell on you. You know what I mean?
No, I totally get that.
Yeah.
And look, I think that's plausible.
It's totally possible.
But does it matter? Because the people paying the bill,
right? The rest of the story will tell us, right?
Yeah.
The money from the Chinese bank accounts tells the story more than the text message. But the text message is incontrovertible, like evidence that he was running an influence game using his father's name.
But also, it's important to know. I can't remember which outlet it was. It may have been the Washington Examiner or someone. They went to the date of this and they placed Joe Biden in the same place as Hunter.
Oh, because Hunter was in the Corvette or something, right?
Somehow they were at the same location. There's photos from that day.
God bless the Examiner.
Yeah,
I mean that's real reporting.
I think it was a great outlet who did this work. It was of course like a center right leaning outlet because the press is just trying to run cover. Yeah, he was there, and a perfect example of this whole like excuse that Hunter suffered from addiction. This is from a New York Times writer, Nicholas Kristof, who Ashbrook's a huge fan of Kristof. Kristof writes this. He says, the real meaning of the Hunter Biden saga, as I see it, isn't about presidential corruption, but it's about how widespread addiction is.
Oh, come on.
How a determined parent with unconditional love can sometimes reel a child back. As we know, everyone who has suffered from addiction gets bribed by the Chinese government and let off by their father who controls the Justice Department. That's just like the 12th step, you know?
Well, as we've seen here over time, the distance between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden as it relates to his business dealings has gotten closer and closer and closer, right?
It was what Bob Alinsky was telling us before the election that everybody wanted to say was insanity.
Right.
And like Tucker was putting him on the show, and they're like, well, there goes Fox again.
Yeah. Because remember in the beginning, it was, I have never discussed any of my son's business dealings. And then we found out, that he took meetings with Hunter's business associates in China.
Yeah.
Now you've got this text message. You've got the office that was opened up with keys for the former vice president in Georgetown, right? Like every story gets closer and closer to them being in the same concentric circle of doing business together. This text message is one more piece of evidence. It's not conclusive, as I said earlier, with the whole thing of him being on crack and who the fuck knows if Joe Biden was actually in the room. But like, we are getting a lot closer than I thought we would be to finding out the truth here.
We've had presidents get impeached for less. This is absurd. I want them to finish the investigation because it's clear that they're at the heart of it. I want them to get all the facts so that we can nail this. And before this election, because last time the media, in lockstep with the Dems, lied to America yet again and said, this is all Russian disinformation. None of this is true. Before this election can occur, we need to get Joe Biden charged with all these crimes that the Biden family's been committing. Like, we cannot be like, oh, well, due process will happen. Maybe the journalists believe in truth. I'm Ashbrook. I think the journalists are doing a great job. Enough is enough. The American people deserve better. They should know the facts before they get to the voting booth. And among those facts is that this family, this Biden crime family, they need to be held accountable. They're criminals.
The truth of the matter is that we know about this because of regular people like Jamie Comer, who happen to be running a committee in the House, regular people who are pushing information online out to everybody, like people like our audience. The days of Woodward and Bernstein meeting somebody in a dark garage to get the information, to get it out to the people, those days are over.
Well, not when there's a Republican president.
Exactly.
When there's a Republican president, the Woodward and Bernsteins are on every payroll.
Oh, they all write books.
Well, not only that, it's like every C4 and Phil son in the country is the next Bernstein. I mean, look, I feel like where I depart from you, Smug, is I think there has to be some kind of reckoning here within the mainstream media at some point of the fact that some of the best investigative journalists in the world who have found out stuff that you would never even imagine possible because of their good work somehow have a total disinterest in what is the biggest story in American government. Yeah. Like whether or not this text message is true is the biggest story in American government. It just is. And I mean, you can say what you want. It just is.
Well, I mean, it is true. It was pulled from his. This is accurate.
Well, no, I get
the contents, whether they can be true.
Yeah, sure. Whether or not it was like, they're all in. And I think there's a preponderance of evidence that would suggest, based on the fact that they shared an office with a Chinese businessman, based on the fact that there were 9 transfers to different family members of the Biden family, that the fact that Biden himself took Hunter on foreign visits to meet with some of these individuals. Like there's a lot of smoke there. But the fact that none of these investigative journalists are interested in coming to a conclusion on that.
The problem there, Holmes, is some of the best investigative journalists on the left who used to exist within the mainstream media have all been pushed out. You look at like a Matt Taibbi, like he did that incredible story.
They all got pushed out.
Goldman Sachs. Look at Glenn Greenwald, who did all of the stuff with Edward Snowden.
Yeah.
Like some of the biggest names in investigative journalism on the left have been pushed out of mainstream media. So like, I don't know who that person is who would write this story and be unafraid to do so.
Well, but I know that there are editors and owners of major publications that listen to this program. And what I would say to them is, if you have ever had any actual inclination in becoming a real journalistic outfit in today's age, don't live off Woodward and Bernstein, what they did 30 years ago. Don't live off fake awards that you were given for Russiagate that actually never happened. Like, try to do some work here.
Yeah.
Because this stuff is flaming shit. And like, there has to be an answer other than he's a crack addict.
Yeah.
Because the money is not a crack addict.
And he's a crack addict. That's a Democrat talking.
And what action was taken? I mean, look, dude, just to go out of China into Ukraine, the fact of the matter is that Hunter was sitting on this board of Burisma being investigated by a local prosecutor who everybody claims was super corrupt and was in he could have been. I don't know. I don't know the facts of all of that. But at the same time, Biden is saying that he's not going to give any sort of money. And he's on record, by the way. Yeah. He says this to camera, face to face, on video, to camera, that he's not going to release American aid to Ukraine unless they get rid of this prosecutor that just so happened to be investigating Burisma. Well, that seems pretty fucking coincidental to me.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the story that ultimately got Trump to do what he did that got him impeached the first time.
Right.
So the question is, if it was good for the goose, it's got to be good for the gander here. But somebody needs to do some work on this.
Yeah.
And it's not up to DOJ. I think using DOJ as a political pawn to sort of charge one way or another and get these like ridiculous indictments against Trump officials who quite obviously didn't have anything to do with any sort of grand conspiracy was the absolute perversion of justice. And I think doing that in the other direction, we're going to get to a point in like 4 or 6 years that this country doesn't exist. If you actually believe that your government is going to prosecute your political enemies, that's the existence of America.
It's happening now.
But
it's
happening. But my point is, you got to do something about it.
But part of what the argument you're making an argument that our country is suffering because we lack a healthy press corps.
Yes,
there are things that justice does not need to carry out. That the mainstream press should hit Democrats, should even it up. And if they did, more Republicans would read their papers. I mean, to your point that like if they would just pursue this story, just write about it. I mean, we've spent the last 15 minutes talking, justifying the conversation about this ridiculous text. And we all know that if it was a Republican who texted it, nobody would spend any time justifying anything. It would be the headline.
Dem prosecutors have convened grand juries for far less.
That
100%, and currently do. But I guess my point is, if you're going to go eye for eye with the Justice Department, we're going to end up in a death spiral.
It's not supposed to be a political entity.
You have to have, if the next president, the next Republican president, needs as priority one to restore American faith in the justice system, and I'm not talking about the Supreme Court, which you should already have a lot of faith in. I'm not talking about appellate courts, which by and large have a very good sense of where the law is, even when you disagree. I'm talking about these criminal courts and these prosecutors, which George Soros has paid billions of, at least millions of dollars.
It's been the biggest bang for the buck that the left dark money groups have done, probably in their existence, of just buying up prosecutors across this country.
Totally.
Yeah, they just reelected one in Falls Church where you live, Ashbrook.
I heard about that.
Yeah, like $250,000 to this prosecutor.
Yeah.
Like that cheap, these Dems are buying up prosecutors because they're like, okay, well, what's the other side of the equation? If we're not good at getting judges confirmed like Republicans have been, what's the other side of the equation? Well, we'll just buy prosecutors. Yeah. Those races are super cheap.
I mean, we need a president who's going to come in and say, hey, here's my attorney general. They're going to run this law and order the way that I want it to be run. And that's the last fucking conversation I'm going to have with him about it. He's going to go do it. He's not going to be my personal lawyer. He's going to be the attorney general, the likes of which this country deserves. And then that person needs to go out and hire a whole bunch of people and know that the FBI director fucking works for him. They're not out there being playboys with the law, subpoenaing people, getting people to go testify on witch hunts that never exist. Like, they need to have all that. And then with those prosecutors down the stream, they need to have a federal preemption in ridiculous bullshit to say we're not putting fucking up with that shit. We're just not doing it. You want to appeal to a federal level? Like, the court system needs to hear it. I mean, this perversion of justice is so bad. And the media is doing nothing, nothing to help themselves. If we had some transparency in this shit, do you think that any of it would have happened? Like, I don't think so.
I think it's the media model has changed completely. And the newsrooms are now run by a mob of Zoomers who are in Slack and will go after a pelt in the newsroom if any reporter doesn't come off as being 100% down with the team. If they're not a team player for the left, they're going to send after them.
Yeah.
It's cultural, and it's also by association, right? It's the whole Stockholm syndrome.
Tom Cotton writing an opinion piece, which was like, we should send in the National Guard to put down these riots, was so unacceptable for the staff at the New York Times that they got people fired who allowed that to happen. They're like, no, the riots must occur.
For publishing the words.
It is an unhealthy news organization. Yeah. It is the surest sign.
And I can tell you from years of working with a lot of reporters on Capitol Hill, there are some really good ones. And Ashbrook is right about that. And there are also an awful lot of people who are consumed with Stockholm syndrome, and that what they see as success is when they are asking a question of a lawmaker or somebody in charge who's uncomfortable giving an answer. And that's a news bulletin because they're uncomfortable with the, regardless of the news context of which it's asked. So, you ask some Republican about what they think about an indictment of Donald Trump, they're going to be uncomfortable with it because obviously he's part of the home team here. They don't know all the facts. They're not investigating it, but they know they can fucking be really uncomfortable if somebody asks them about it. So reporters continue to ask them about it. And then they all see everybody else's success in that regard. And one of them wins an award and this award for doing it. So they just continue to do that. And like that, the perversion of journalism and justice right now at this particular moment in time is perfectly emblematic of this Hunter Biden story.
And I think what you described, I don't think that model exists. I think the motives have completely changed for reporters, where it's like, okay, do I want to, like, you even think of the pipeline. Think of what the pipeline was like for a reporter to come to the New York Times, let's say 20 years ago. They started off at some local paper, worked their way up to like the biggest paper in the state. Then maybe they went to small publication.
or getting coffee for people in the newsroom.
Yeah.
And then you rise up, you work your way up inside.
That's gone. Now it's how quickly can you amass a bunch of Twitter followers? You push out salacious shit. It doesn't matter if it's true, right? You've got these. I think the Trump era was perfect for this when you had all these reporters who pushed this Russia shit, and all of them got their book deals, and their following online exploded. They didn't need the publication anymore. They became, the audience is based on the journal. And so the journal can then go to their startup, if it's Puck or whatever. They don't care about building up awards or anything. They give a Cronkite award to, what's the name of that clown?
Ben Collins.
Ben Collins got a Cronkite award. I mean, like,
That's
become
the most
joke.
That's the most clownish thing I've ever. They should be ashamed.
Yeah.
They should be. Whoever gives that award should be ashamed. Walter Cronkite is rolling in his grave at the idea that a guy like that, a flaming partisan, I'm not saying I don't know what his politics are. He's a partisan Democrat is what he is. And it shows in every bit of his reporting and his Twitter interaction. I mean, look at like the last 10 tweets on his timeline, and you can come to that conclusion.
And he doesn't even write anymore. I think it was Luke Thompson who pointed this out, and he was like, the last thing this guy published was like 2 weeks ago. Like, he does not, his job is just building an online audience and being a member of the team. And that's what gets rewarded. And that builds up their following. And then, like, Taylor Lorenz has gotten contracts from the Washington Post and the New York Times.
One more thing.
This is the state of journalism.
I know we need to move on, but one more thing that is just one of the more disturbing movements that we've seen rise up through these Zoomers is the war on objectivity in newsrooms. They are literally writing that objectivity is bad.
100%.
That what we're supposed to write is Democrat talking points. They don't call it Democrat talking points. What they're actually doing is saying we need to write what the Democrats say we should write, what the left wing of the Democrat
They've used the term both sidesing, where they're like, you're not allowed to have, they're saying, oh, both sidesing it, huh? You're not allowed to have an opposing viewpoint. There's only one viewpoint. It's the state-approved viewpoint. It's the corporate viewpoint. It's the left's viewpoint.
Guess what? Half of the country voted for something completely different than anything that you think is even legitimate.
You'd think that would tell them something.
But they don't care.
They don't.
Nope.
They don't. Well, I know one thing. We can get into Italian stuff pretty quickly. New York Post reported that New York City rules crack down on coal. I can't believe this.
This is such insanity.
And wood-fired pizzerias. They must cut carbon emissions up to 75%. Like, think about this. You got, like, China and India burning coal. Like, it doesn't matter what if America went to net negative zero emissions, my understanding is it would be less than like 13% of the entire world.
That's if we shut down all factories, no one's allowed campfires, we execute every cow.
We become Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, if
all of us become Ted Kaczynski. If we all live
in tree houses and like eat grass,
yeah,
then we can make like 7% difference.
Yeah. And these guys are busting down on pizza joints.
And I think this 100% goes back. We've talked about the climate death cult mentality of, I don't care if it makes a difference. I want everyone to be as miserable as me. The greatest way to inflict absolute like suffering on humanity is to get rid of pizza. Like, that would be step one. Like, Hitler rises from the grave and he was like, this time I'm getting the pizza. And this is what they're going for. Like, there is nothing more New York than a pizzeria, man. You walk in and it just smells good. The pizza is so much better when it comes fresh from that, like, coal-fired or wood-fired oven. And they want to take that away. Why?
So here it is. Historic Big Apple pizza joints could be forced to dish out mounds of dough under a proposed city edict targeting pollutant-spewing coal and wood-fired ovens, the Post has learned. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection has drafted new rules that would order eateries using decades-old baking methods to slice carbon emissions by 75%. I mean, listen to this quote. That's just so funny. For anybody who's been to New York, this quote is hysterical. all New Yorkers deserve to breathe healthy air, and wood and coal-fired stoves are amongst the largest contributors of harmful pollutants in neighborhoods with poor air quality.
I'm sorry, but
what the?
New York smells like trash and shit and marijuana. Like you're telling me pollutants? There's pollutants in the air?
You got rats running around like they're just owning the joint.
Well, their like greatest concern of like health and safety is what about these pizzerias killing New Yorkers and not like some Michael Jackson impersonators pushing people on train tracks. You know, like the priorities are so insane and misguided. Where I mean, Duncan did a perfect job describing. It's like no one likes going to New York in the summer because you know that smell.
Yeah.
It's a horrible smell.
You don't want to do it.
You know what? The New York Italians are fighting back. I don't know if you saw the video, but it has gone viral online of this guy who is at City Hall tossing pizza slices over the fence, saying, give me pizza or give me death.
He was like, you've heard of the Boston Tea Party? He was like, this is the New York Pizza Party. And then he rolls up with these like 3 huge pizzas, just starts throwing them over. And like, then the police walk up and they flip ends.
We've been too hard on the Italians on this show. They're the backbone of the resistance at this point.
I would say, yeah, you know, I'm happy to see that they're getting involved in this situation because, I mean, that is a direct attack on, you know, the many Italians' livelihood and their culture. So I hope that they stand up and fight for this. But like, it is just insane. Like, you think of New York, there are few things as emblematic of that city as just a slice of pizza.
Totally.
And that's what these psychopaths are attacking.
And you would argue, Duncan, that the pizza that we've invented here in the United States of America is far superior to the Italian.
It's far
100%.
superior. I don't know why people eat pizza in Italy at all. I don't get it. You get this thin garbage with these globs of mozzarella on it and then sauce strewn all across the pizza. And they put like leaves on it, basil leaves. You want to eat like a fucking leaf from a tree? We mastered pizza here in this country. Okay?
It's like a very persuasive argument that I have fully bought.
It's hard to beat the personal pan.
The Italians. You've got Christopher Columbus, right? Marconi, the radio, Enrico Fermi, and then you've got New York pizza. Italy doesn't have shit on us.
I love it. It's so good.
Christopher Columbus.
Back to politics for a second. This is from Axios. GOP loyalty pledge draws heat from 2024 candidates. So the Republican National Committee has a loyalty pledge, as they've had, I think, since the beginning of time. It's only become significant in the era of Trump. But it has a growing list of detractors among 2024 candidates. In the latest sign, the Republican Party infighting and reluctance to coalesce around a former President Trump if he is the eventual nominee. Now, the reason I said it's because it's been there since the beginning of time. It really has been there since the beginning of time. And it has never been risen as a big issue, in my memory anyway, during a primary election because you're fighting tooth and nail. You hate these people. This is a competition in the highest possible manner. And nobody wants to say, oh, yeah, if I lose, I'm going to go endorse the other guy. Like, it just doesn't. That's a bad time to ask the question, is my point.
Right.
But it has to come up because in 2016, Trump was like, I don't know. I don't know. and the RNC let him on the stage because he was like, yes, I'll do that. And then they asked him on stage and he was like, man, I don't know. We'll see.
And here's the other thing. I don't know if you fellas caught on to this, but La Savita sort of made news on our show because he was asked that question and he didn't answer it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think he raised a pretty good point, which was that, like,
ask everybody else.
How about you ask everybody else? I mean, Chris Christie on our show said that Donald Trump had disqualified himself, right?
Yeah.
So is Chris Christie going to sign that loyalty pledge if Donald Trump's the nominee? Well, probably not.
And Chris said it here,
right?
That he was like, I'll take it with all the seriousness that Donald Trump took it,
right?
Which is sure.
So then it is kind of just a joke.
So it seems to me like the RNC is doing its job.
Right.
They're doing what they need to
for
do
the party.
For the party. Their only job is to make sure that they have a consolidated party post-nomination. So they're doing what they need to do. It's the same stuff that everybody, like, to act as though this is something that's like new or interesting or like edgy that Rana is doing over at the RNC. It's not. Like we've done this stuff. We used to do these things in state in Senate races all the time,
right?
Where you'd have a like a kumbaya moment where everybody would say like I will support whatever, but you don't do it at the height of the primary because you know what the answers are going to be. They're not like great. They're not great.
Yeah.
And that's why the mainstream media is picking up on all of this, is because like you ask Ron DeSantis whether he wants Donald Trump to be president right now, he's going to be like, no.
Right.
I want to be president right
now. And Donald Trump would say the same thing of him.
And Trump started all of it in 2016 by making it an issue that actually has to be discussed. Like before it was like, of course, I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden. Like that's should be, but there was a very, very real discussion happening in 2016 about whether Trump would just continue running on an independent ticket, which by the way is not really possible. Like you can't really get, most states have sore loser laws. Most states don't allow you to get on ballot access that easy. Like it's not feasibly all that possible, but somebody continuing to run just rhetorically, even not on the ballot, creates a rift within the party that has a problem with consolidation ultimately against the consolidated Fetterman Democrat Party.
Yeah.
So that's why all this stuff is coming up. I can't blame them. I think they're doing the right thing by trying to get the pledge.
Sign it.
Just sign the pledge. We'll be you know what? We will be the arbiters of that.
It's up to the voters to decide that.
If Republican primary voters who are the most angst-ridden about a Biden administration can sense for a second that you're not in this to try to beat him,
right?
They'll let you know.
What always sort of bothers me about this stuff is the people who are giving the RNC a hard time. Like they're literally there just to conduct the election.
Yeah.
And honestly, they're doing a phenomenal job. I mean, if you follow the RNC Research Twitter account, if you don't, I highly recommend that you do. They put out so much content. Everybody working the press over there is working their ass off.
And the debate rules. The debate rules, I think, which are absolutely huge, right? Like the Democrats did it so well in 2020, where they had these candidates who not only had to poll well, but they had to bring in a certain number of donors.
And ours is like 40,000 donors, which I think honestly is a very attainable goal.
Very attainable
for a serious presidential candidate.
And it'll benefit whoever is the nominee eventually. So like that's huge.
Yep, I totally agree. We mentioned the Trump gains in support within the primary. That is according to a couple new polls that are out. The news from the rest of the field is that we have Will Hurd, former representative, who has thrown his hat into the ring. He's a real favorite amongst
the libs,
sort of corporate types.
Right. Yeah,
right?
It's hard to see how he catches on with the Republican base. But everybody's running.
He's the kind of guy that will show up in everybody's corporate board and they'll be like, "Why don't you run for president? You're perfectly reasonable."
Right.
And so he's like, "Maybe I will." And so he's going to get the 16 votes on that board.
Right.
Christie, I like this, guys. I like this. I like the fact.
I think we should have Will Hurd on if he's willing to.
No, he should come on and we should talk about it, because here's the thing. He's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
I've talked to him before. He's a very nice guy. He's just like, it just feels like an Asa Hutchinson in the same category. I'm sure he's a great guy. I just don't understand what the pitch is at this point.
Yeah.
So there was this big conservative confab that happened over the weekend, I think. Right?
Yeah, this is Faith and Freedom.
Yeah, the Faith and Freedom, where you had a whole bunch of presidential candidates. Trump, DeSantis, Pence, Haley, Scott, Christie, 6 others. I mean, everybody was there. Christie goes into the place, I think, knowing that this crowd was going to hate him. And he like just accepted the booze.
Yeah.
Just accepted the booze.
Yeah.
Which, if you watched our interview with him, that is just a perfect Chris Christie, right? He shows up, even when he knows that everybody's going to hate what he has to say, and he just delivers the same message and then interacts with the audience. And I don't know. There's something about it that I think is great.
What I appreciate about it is like, he knows the score. Like, he can read a poll, and he knows his fave unfave in the Republican primary electorate as it exists today.
Yep.
Is very, 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 very negative. And we know when we have him on the show, there's a lot of people who listen to the show who don't like him. but we think he speaks authentically what he thinks.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's a Republican primary.
Right.
And like, that's more honest to you as a listener or to the people sitting in that room than going up there and being like, oh boy, you know what? I think Donald Trump is perfect and did a great job, and that's why I'm running against him. Does that make any fucking sense?
And that's why we have this show.
Right. Right.
That's why I think you enjoy this show, is because the only thing, we're right of center. Everybody knows we're conservatives. Everybody knows what we think about the left. What we demand in our platform, and the reason we do the interviews the way we do them, is that you have some authenticity in your pitch.
Yeah.
And that's why we like Christie, because you can come in here and you can throw shots at him. And like, I'm going to disagree with a whole bunch of stuff that he has to say. And he just comes back at it and says whatever it is that doesn't hesitate.
Yeah.
And I think if you get more of that, that's what Trump does better than anyone.
Right. And you can say, oh, well, Chris Christie has no chance of becoming president. You're probably
right.
But you know what? He started at the polls at 1% and he's at 5 now.
He was at 7 in NBC.
7 in NBC.
Yeah.
Third. He's in third now.
Yeah. That's the thing, is you look at all this stuff and you have to figure out the one thing. What's the one thing? Is it ESG standards? Is it woke culture? Is it taxes? Is it spending? Is it like, what's the one thing that binds Republican primary voters right now? It's authenticity.
Yeah.
And they feel like they've always had it from Trump. Whether you love him or whether you hate him, he's going to tell you exactly what it is that he thinks, even when it seems like it's legally perilous to do so, as you said in the Brett Baer interview.
Right.
And Christie's the only one that's doing that right now.
Yeah.
Like, maybe this is DeSantis's authentic self. I don't know. We'll find out over time.
Yeah.
And he needs to get on the show. And we're still waiting for Tim Scott and who else? We've had Nikki Haley on.
We had Vivek on.
We had Chris Christie on.
Mm-hmm.
So
we've got a bunch of things lined up, including, I think, maybe one this week. So you're going to hear from all of them during the course of the Ruthless primary, brought to you by America's natural gas providers.
That's right.
But I will say, I think Nikki started with an incredibly compelling, authentic pitch, like a little wobbly in the last couple of weeks, that I don't love. But I think she's there, and I think Tim Scott's kind of getting there. But that's the one thing I would say to all of these candidates is, who gives a shit about where the 55 is on the polling chart right now? Give Republican primary voters your authentic view of how you would like to run this country, and you're going to be rewarded for it. That's how you get Chris Christie, who probably has the fewest amount of positions that are accepted by a Republican primary electorate, now in third place after 2 weeks of his candidacy.
And then early on, you saw Vivek quickly building momentum and then pivoting to just like defending Trump as his only policy position.
Which nobody
very early
believes.
Very early on, when he basically was just trying to introduce himself to voters, be like, this is what I'm about. This is what I would do. He started building up momentum.
It was very compelling.
He started building up momentum. A lot of folks were starting to talk about him. And then it just like, as soon as the charges dropped against Trump, he just flipped to being like, I'm now working for the Trump campaign.
Dude, he spent he does these very long form tweets, which I do not understand. Do you understand what Twitter is? Please stop doing long form tweets. Nobody is going to expand and read the whole thing. This is not a press release. But today he's like talking about how unfair the Espionage Act is, which is like one of the reasons why Donald Trump is indicted for this documents case. It's like, I just don't get it. It goes back to my whole thing. You go up on stage and you say Donald Trump is the perfect president who did nothing wrong, and that's why I'm running against him. It doesn't make any sense.
He has a lot of well-formed views about the Espionage Act from the biotech industry. That's something that you usually come in contact with a lot when you're in biotech.
Also, I want to hear from Progrum.
I do too.
The dude has an awesome story.
I mean, and a head of hair.
Flow. He's got great flow.
And he
does have great flow.
He got attacked by some journos.
Why?
So I can't remember which one it was. They were talking to one of their buddies, and they were like, "Oh, I had them on my podcast," and he asked a really great question: why the hell would Progrum, who became a billionaire, live in North Dakota?
What?
They thought that was like a profound thought.
Did he put the barrel
And-
hat on that?
And
I
so,
hope
like,
he just
a
wheel kicked.
rep who I guess has endorsed Burgum replied, well, maybe because he was born and raised there and built a company there and has lived there his entire life. Like, it is just stunning. Like, this media bubble of them being like, why wouldn't he move to some, like, shithole town like San Francisco and be miserable with other billionaires? Watch some, like, heroin junkie take a shit on his front yard, you know? Like what? So I want to hear Burgum.
Yeah.
I want it straight from the horse's mouth. Because, I mean, the story is awesome. There were so many people who were playing these journos with these great stories of, like, what the guy did. So, like, his company, basically, their foundation, it was in computers, is they were like, we will only hire kids who graduate from college in North Dakota.
Wow.
Good policy.
Wow, really?
Because what happens is in a lot of these places is they try to have, there's a brain drain.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know, you'll have these corporations on the coast that just want to pull these kids out, and then they move there and they live there, and it, you know, there's no growth back home.
Yeah.
They took the opposite tack. Compelling story.
Well, not only that, I mean, you can see where a guy like that, if he had a footprint as all of America, would be good for keeping people employed here in this country.
I mean, Burgum damn near killed him.
I love this. All right, so here's our last story, and this is going to be a little bit of a wonky one, but you guys got to stick with us on this because it's important. You hear a lot about how much money everybody's spending.
Mm-hmm.
Not all money is the same. We've told you this time and time again, but we really do mean it in terms of those of you who are giving $5 and $10 to your favorite candidates. This is from Inside Elections. While Trump and DeSantis have both ceded their paid media efforts to friendly super PACs, Scott is spending directly from his campaign account. He's talking about Tim Scott. That gives access to significantly lower advertising rates than super PACs. For instance, in Des Moines media market, both Scott and the DeSantis super PAC Never Back Down spent roughly $390,000 on broadcast TV ads between May 22 and June 27. But when measured by gross ratings points, that's basically a measure that advertisers use to see how many times each viewer has seen a targeted person has seen each advertisement. That's what gross ratings points are. The industry standard for advertising impact. Scott's purchase was 4 times larger than the DeSantis super PACs at 3,913 points to 968. Each of Scott's dollars had quadrupled the value of the super PAC.
And I know we've talked about this previously on the show, but just to refresh everybody's memory, the issue here is that candidates get a lowest market rate when they buy television, but super PACs don't. So you go into a small state like Iowa where everybody is trying to spend so much money and there's only so much inventory. For all the super PACs trying to buy ad inventory, the stations can charge 3x, 4x what the candidates are guaranteed at a much, much lower rate. So it makes a huge difference in the aggregate.
And again, that's like we've stressed is why it's so important to give directly to the candidate.
Yes.
Because they get so much more bang for the buck because they get it at the candidate rate. What I wonder is why hasn't there tactically been more of a pivot of super PACs to do everything but TV?
Well, so there has been a little bit, and I don't know how much is actually going to come to fruition here with Never Back Down, but I remember they said
They were
going to
invest in ground.
Yeah, they're going to do a bunch of ground because in ground, a dollar's a dollar. It's not. It doesn't matter if it's a super PAC or it's a campaign. You know?
And what we mean by ground is people like paid door knockers and
leaving literature and stuff like that.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, but you know, there's this chart here in the article overall because you mentioned it earlier, but I think even in the larger numbers, it's even starker. Here, Tim Scott spent $795,000 for 11,324 gross ratings points. Never Back Down spent $1.1 million and got 3,094 gross ratings.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a huge difference.
It's huge. You spent more money and you got a third of the value.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, you're going to find that the campaigns that have a lot of hard dollars to spend in some of these states are getting a lot more bang for their buck than the ones that are relying on super PACs. Now, next week, we're going to find out, well, maybe not next week, but in the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
we're going to start finding out what everybody did in the quarter 2.
Right.
Which is a big benchmark as to how we're doing in this presidential election. It will have to submit their fundraising reports to the FEC by June 30, and then in the next 2 weeks, they have to publicly report what it is. that's always a political game in and of itself as to who goes first and what you do. But my guess is that if you did really well, you're coming out pretty quickly after the June 30 deadline to tell us how much you raised.
Right, and how many unique donors you have because of that RNC requirement. You want to have 40,000 unique donors. So if you're a Ron DeSantis and you announced you had a huge bump, you might go out there and try to get some earned media before that 15th deadline where it becomes public and want to shape that story. Ashbrook obviously knows a lot about this.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, that's always the play, and we'll be watching very closely.
All right. Well, we got to get to this interview. Carol Roth, you'll remember her from last time she was on. She's written a new book. I got to tell you, daunting what she's writing in this book. A little scary.
Okay.
And not, you don't get the total, the lighthearted Carol that we usually have. Like, she's got some serious stuff to say, but you ought to listen to it because she's got a lot of important things. Here it is. I want to welcome to the program an old friend, someone we've had on here previously who you've all enjoyed. She's out with a new book. It's actually coming out next month, but you need to get a heads up on it. Carol Roth, how are you?
I'm good, Josh. I'm going to take a little bone of contention. I am not an old friend. I am a longtime friend. I happen to be very young and bright and exuberant. So we are longtime friends. And I have to tell you, I have to shout out my dentist, Dr. Michelle, because Dr. Michelle is a huge fan of Ruthless podcast.
I love that.
She came in last time I was on. She's like, "Oh my God, I heard you." So we're going to shout out Dr. Michelle.
Dr. Michelle, thanks for listening. Keep those teeth doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. I think Carol and the viewing audience will be very appreciative of your good work. You listen. You're out with a new book. You will own nothing. Tell us about this.
Super uplifting title, isn't it, Josh?
Yeah. It was like,
another happy title from Carol Roth. So I think most of your audience has heard the World Economic Forum's 8 predictions for 2030. Their number one prediction was you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. And when I first heard about this on social media, as happens so often when you're on Twitter or wherever else, you're like, oh, they probably didn't get that right. That's probably not what was meant. It was taken out of context because World Economic Forum, like, that's filled with the business elite and the political elites and, the top decision makers around the world. Like, there's no way that they're predicting the end of private property and, by 2030, which is, now 7 years away. So I did very little research to find out that, yes, that was exactly what they had talked about. And as somebody who has been in the media advocating for wealth creation opportunities for every American and frankly, every person around the world, I know that wealth comes from ownership, right? You own assets that hopefully at least retain their value, but if you're lucky, appreciate in value. And that's how people create wealth. So the idea that you have people who are associated with the world's elites kind of, standing at odds with this wealth creation opportunity seemed really strange to me. And as I was trying to connect a bunch of dots on things that were happening from sort of the shifting global financial order to what's been happening with the Fed and their money printer to what's going on with big tech and trying to basically rent your life back to you as a subscription or a service, to corporations competing with individuals to buy homes, to the consolidation of land and water rights, education, younger people not being able to buy homes, like all these things. It just all kept coming back to the saying, you will own nothing, you will own nothing. So it's really meant to empower people to know what's happening in all these different silos. But the important thing at the end is that, I want you to own everything. So obviously, we get to a plan of action to fight back, but you can't really do that until you understand, what's happening in all these disparate pieces.
Well, it's important background for those of you who don't know Carol. She's as a self-described recovering investment banker, an entrepreneur in her own right. And we've known her in recent years as a pundit and everything else. But she's got a background of these things and she knows what she's talking about when she views some of the things that are coming out of all of these various places that have a eerily similar prediction. And this is a daunting conclusion you've come to.
Yeah, it's really crazy because a lot of the people who are talking about things like you will own nothing and a new world order are very conspiratorial and, frankly, nutty. So there are a lot of nutty people talking about these things, and so they sound nutty. And what I wanted to do in this book was to do a lot of research and let the individuals speak from themselves and take the conspiracy element out of it. I mean, something as simple as, the new financial world order or the new world order. Again, you tell people and they're like, oh, that's tinfoil hat stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, again, take much research. You type in Joe Biden, New World Order, and you will find all searches and all these results for him talking about this. He talked about this on March 21st, 2022, in front of the Business Roundtable, which is all of the leaders of the biggest companies, the CEOs of the biggest companies in the U.S. And he says, this is something that happens every 3 to 4 generations, which is true, and we can revisit that in a second, and that there's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. So, they're saying these words, they're saying these things. This isn't a conspiracy unless you happen to think the president is also a conspiracy theorist. And I think lots of things about the president, but that really isn't one of them. I think he happens to be in the know. Well, at least his team happens to be in the know about.
He's pretty good between. He's pretty good between 10 and 2. That's those are the hours.
He can read their findings. But, this is reality. I mean, this is something that happens throughout history. We have been incredibly fortunate. We have, through the last 80 years, lived through incredible prosperity. We have been the center of the global financial universe. So we can't imagine a scenario where we're not in that position. But before us, it was the British. And I'm pretty sure at that point in time, they probably felt the same. And before the British, it was the Dutch. And so this is something that happens on a fairly regular historical basis. And we can just see that, some of the same issues, the insane debt loads that we're having and some of the behaviors of the government as well as other players in the world really are starting to rhyme with history. So it's not like we're just kind of picking this up out of nowhere. We have these real benchmarks that are going on from a historical standpoint. And, our cycle is getting long in the tooth. So if you're somebody who is well connected and you know this to be true, you could just sit around and go, yeah, I hope this all works out, in our favor. Or you could proactively try to, shape it and control it and do whatever you can to make sure you and your buddies come out on top. And so I really think, that is what is at the root of this. And it's funny, if you go back to the World Economic Forum's predictions, everyone got so up in arms about number 1 that they didn't even see what number 2 was. Number 2 was that the U.S. will no longer be the world's, sole superpower. It's something like that. And so they're saying these things, but we're just so focused on everything else, we're missing a lot of those cues.
So, but if you think about it, I mean, look, this is big stuff, right? I mean, we have, as you said, as Americans, enjoyed a superpower for most everybody who's listening to this program. We have listened to leaders since Reagan, basically, preside over what is quite obviously been the world's superpower, both economically and militarily, for 40 years. And now here we are. What are the things that have led to this moment that you think have provided the opportunity for some sort of a dramatic change where America's not driving this any longer?
Yeah, I mean, as it was back in Rome, the calls coming from inside of the house. I mean, this is a scenario where America is basically killing itself, that its quote unquote leaders, the central bank and the government leaders, are the ones who are going to be the ones that make the country implode and lose our standing. It's not like it's, there's this great bastion of free ideas and individual rights that's up and coming, waiting to take our place. It's because we're literally and when I say we, those elite central planners have done things that have created this scenario. Obviously, when we started in this kind of pole position, it really started with Bretton Woods. We had a gold-backed currency. Then we came off of the gold standard, went to sort of a fiat currency scenario. The Fed starts playing a larger role. And when you are the world's reserve currency, there's something called the Triffin dilemma. It's from economist Robert Triffin. He was a noted economist back in the day. And he's basically like, look, here's the trade-off, that if you're the world's reserve currency, you have to sometimes make decisions. Do you, manage the reserve currency, the dollar, for the benefit of the stability of the global economy or for the benefit of the stability of the domestic economy?
Fascinating.
Amazingly, over the last 15 years, the Fed has managed to do neither. So they haven't kept it stable for the international economy, and certainly not here at home either. And so that's really been one of the big issues, and we've seen that accelerate over the last 15 years. We've had this incredible interference in the market, zero interest rate policy or near zero for the better part of a decade and a half, $9 trillion put on the balance sheet of the Fed, printed out of nowhere. These things have real consequences. And the consequences, one is it's enabled the U.S. government to continue to run these insane deficits and to load up on their debt load. If you think about what is a sort of max debt load from a public debt to GDP standpoint, a lot of the economists, even like the IMF, it's like somewhere around 80% you can kind of top out at. And we're at 125% right now. So we're very debt heavy. And as you can tell, there's no plans of like austerity to try to get that back into the realm of reality. It's like, no, let's spend more. Let's continue to just run up these huge deficits. So we've had that. We've seen this tremendous transfer of wealth from Main Street to Wall Street. So when you get into some of the specific areas that I go into, and You'll Own Nothing, and you learn things about why is it so hard for the average person to buy a house? A lot of it is tied to this very complicated policy that people don't really understand, that basically interfered in the market in a way that not only inflated the asset values and kept driving up the prices of the houses, but then also created a scenario where the people who didn't have assets, your average Americans, weren't earning anything on their savings, now are contending with inflation. And so you're kind of getting it coming and going.
Yeah.
And so that really, it is our own fault. And then even just on a world stage, when you see somebody like China making a huge play here, obviously China, has a big ego and they want to, come out onto the world stage, but they couldn't do that if we weren't screwing things up. I mean, when we are not holding that dollar stable versus, let's say, a barrel of oil, and the oil prices go up, and we're not willing to do the things that Paul Volcker did back under Reagan to get that back into balance, that is an economic and a security issue for countries like China. I mean, China is the largest net importer of oil. They're an importer of food. When these commodities are priced in dollars around the world, and the prices, the dollar, kind of goes through the roof, and all of a sudden it takes more of them to buy these commodities, that is a national economic and national security issue for your country. So of course you're not going to give the U.S. this privileged position if they're not willing to take it seriously. So these are the kinds of backdrop issues that I unpack and unfold and go into.
So it's
so that people
domestic.
can really understand that.
It's domestic policy driven, as we all imagine, right? I mean, what we're dealing with is a basically murder-suicide of the United States by our own government.
I think that is the largest piece. There's certainly so I kind of identify three areas, like kind of three sets of bad actors who are kind of fighting what I call World War F, which is a global world war where you are effed. And basically it is, as I talked about, the Fed and the government together and their policies. And that really is a huge slice of it. But then you have what I call the bad actors. And some of these are national, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, but also big business and the like. And then the third tranche of that is big tech, which is sort of another animal unto itself. Although these three kind of groups tend to coordinate together, but you do have these sort of intergovernmental organizations, which we happen to finance, which should just, piss the hell out of everybody, here. I mean, you should be super pissed off that your money is going to this level of insanity. But again, they see the weakness. They see that things are changing. And that's when you get things like ESG put out into the world. Now they just had a conference last week at the time that we're taping this, which was like, let's have a sustainable financial impact, and let's, kind of change around the financing because, these emerging market countries are in debt, but also climate change. Like, none of it makes any sense, but you can just see that like the stakes are shifting and everybody's trying to take advantage.
Let me ask you about that ESG piece, because I agree. Look, I think all of this infrastructure has been created under the nose of the American people without a lot of discussion about it. And clearly there has been a total reallocation of resources in all of these big banks and hedge funds and everything else as it relates to what ESG standards are ultimately going to dictate, none of which are in the interest of the investors, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But now you've seen this become an issue on the conservative right. You've seen candidates like Ron DeSantis talk about this a lot. Actually, Tim Scott's talked about this a lot. A number of people have been in this discussion, raising it to a level of national discussion. And you saw last week Larry Fink come out and say, maybe this was not such a great idea. Is that progress?
Let's unpack. So it is that obviously Larry Fink, for those who don't know, is the head of BlackRock, which is the largest investment firm in the world. At one point, about a year ago, they had $10 trillion in assets under management. Then like a year later, it was just about 9, depending on where the markets are. It's probably somewhere in between that level. But yeah, he's taking a lot of heat because he, by the way, super tied into the WEF, and one of the people who championed bringing this into the business world, has been personally taking a lot of flack for it. So it's very interesting. He's at this Aspen Ideas Festival, kind of the domestic version of the WEF. I don't know when these people work. They just go around to all these festivals on their private jets and sit in their mansions and, run up the carbon footprint and then tell us that we can't have, wood-fired pizza anymore. That this is kind of what they do, I guess, with their free time.
Well, Carol, when you're famous, they let you do it.
Well, yeah, they're the important people. How they have to save the planet. We'll come back to that in a second because I've got a funny story to share with you on that. But yeah, you've got Larry Fink, who's taking a lot of heat. So what he said is that he's not going to use the term ESG anymore because it's been politicized. He did not say that he's going to go away from the concept of bullying businesses and using business social credit to get them to do what they want. I think James Lindsay is saying conscious capitalism. There will be some other moniker that is just ESG with different branding that is the same thing. It's business social credit that changes based on the whims of a handful of people, and they use bullying tactics and, frankly, your money to not ensure that you get a good return on investments because they don't care about that, but to instead take that and use that to hold companies hostage.
Let me ask you about this. Let me ask you about this just to put a finer point on it, because I do think, look, you can't deny the ESG situation. You can't deny how that has perverted capitalism in this country. All of it is just so obvious to anyone with a brain. The question I have is whether or not you think this is a result of, I think you categorized it as sort of an elite few making decisions, or whether or not there has been a concerted effort on the left to basically industrialize a movement in boardrooms that make it impossible to ignore for people to have to implement these sort of things in order to do business at all.
So I would offer up that those are the same things.
Okay.
That basically the structure that I lay out in my book. And I got some of it from Peter Thiel from a talk that I saw him do with Alex Epstein around fossil futures. And then I sort of adapted it into my own language. But basically, the idea is that you get these people who maybe have a good idea. And listen, we all want to be good stewards of the planet, right? Like it sounds like a good thing. And generally we want to do that. And we want to have diverse perspectives and good outcomes and good governance. But, these are all things that the free market can sort out instead of having like a handful of people dictate it. But what happens is you get these bad actors and these profiteers who co-opt the idea, and then they find out ways to make money. And that's, kind of one of the other issues with ESG is not only is it a capital diverter and sort of business social credit.
There's somebody who owns the other, is somebody that owns the other deal, right?
Not only is there someone who owns it, but in many cases it's a scam. Yeah. It's taking low cost index funds and we're slapping ESG on it, and now we can charge higher fees. And so there's actually, and I lay this out in the book as well, all kinds of what they call greenwashing scams associated with ESG, where people are just, and businesses are slapping ESG labels on things just to extract fees. Actually, the head of BlackRock Sustainable Investing, that their former CIO, Tariq Fancy, left because he's like a pro-environment guy, but he's like, I don't see this doing anything other than benefiting Wall Street. So there's kind of both pieces of that. But back to our little model here is that, so you have these kind of these ideas, then you have the profiteers, and then you have the useful idiots who basically come in and maybe they're getting some kind of social credit bump. They get put an emoji in their profile or put a sign on their lawn. They're part of the right thing. You're part of the wrong thing, and we're cool. I don't have any idea what I'm talking about, but I'm part of this team and you're bad. So I'm just gonna go to the mat on it. So you get those people who entrench it without having any idea. I cannot tell you how many discussions I've had with CEOs and people with ESG in their titles, including of publicly traded companies that don't know what ESG is, don't know where it came from, and some who've never even heard of the World Economic Forum.
They can give you a corporate glossary of the politically correct terms, but no idea what the underlying impact is, right?
Yeah. So that's where it comes down to. But back to my funny story. So this is one that I share in the book that I think your audience, knowing the Ruthless nation here, I thought that they might like, is this whole kind of concept of you have this handful of people who are running around to these conferences and saying like, we're going to do what's great for the world. It just reminded me of a vintage Twilight Zone episode. And in this Twilight Zone episode, you have aliens who come down to Earth from another planet. And when they land, of course, everybody is very skeptical. And why are you here? And what do you want? And they said, listen, we see that you guys have wars and famine and all of these problems, and we just want to help you. Like, we know better. We've solved these things. We have the technology. So just altruistic. We're just here to help. That's our plan. And, the people of Earth, of course, are somewhat skeptical. So they put them through a lie detector test, which they pass. And at the same time, one of the aliens leaves behind a book on accident, and it goes to this like kind of CIA type of group, and they start to decode it, and they decode the cover of the book, and the book is called To Serve Man. And they went, well, that's great. This is what they've been saying. They're here to help us. They're here to serve us. It's a noble cause. I think we should go for it. So, everyone's like, okay, well, the aliens are great. Maybe we should go visit their planet. So they start lining up, and they're going up the spaceship, and they're going to go to the other planet, including one of these CIA type of guys. So he's in line, and he's boarding the ship. And one of his fellow CIA members, who have now decoded the rest of the book, comes running up and says, "To serve man is a cookbook." And that's all I can think of every time I hear this, like, it's for the good of the nation, it's for the good of society. To serve man, people, is a cookbook. And I think that's what we need to understand. These people aren't altruistic. They're not doing it for your benefit. they don't give a flying F about you. To Serve Man is a cookbook. And frankly, again, not to get like crazy conspiratorial, but just based on some of the research, I mean, there are movements that are towards depopulation. There are, very well respected, big, important people who think there are too many people on this planet and, somehow, I guess, want to be in charge of, how that goes down. So just if you take nothing else away from this other than buying yourself a copy of the book, To Serve Man is a cookbook.
Let me ask you this before we let you go. What the hell do we do about this?
So, I take a realistic approach. This is very overwhelming. And, we just kind of scratched the surface of the, 10 or so different areas that I cover. You have to first empower yourself with the knowledge because it requires different tactics to fight back against all of these things. The things that we're going to do to push back against ESG are different than the things that we're going to do to push back against corporations, buying up all the single family homes. So you have to understand it. And we're also not all going to be well positioned to do all of these things. So that's why we have to work together and kind of figure out which ones of us are going to be fighting in this area and which are going to be going in this area. And we're certainly not going to stop a new financial world order from happening either, right? But we can delay it. We can certainly push to, maybe buy us some time and at least slow things down. So the most important thing that you can do is you can set yourself up that if things were to change in the short term, because we know the trajectory, we just never know duration, just like the financial markets, that, if there is this period of change and chaos, that you've done the things to set yourself up behaviorally and financially to manage through that chaos. And so it is a lot of behavioral changes as well as, a lot of financial changes. Like, for example, in the realm of CBDC, central bank digital currencies, which we didn't talk about, if the government gets control of your money to the point where they can actually shut off your ability to spend it.
Yeah, as we saw in the case of like Canadian banks during the truckers, right?
Right. Exactly. The trucker convoy. Or, take that up even a level that they want to control inflation or that they don't like, your social credit, the mean things you're saying on social media, and they want to control it. And that they have actual control over every dollar that you have. What else are you going to do? Are you going to get into precious metals or some alternative assets? Do you have other people you can trade with? Have you made friends with, a rancher or somebody who has chickens so that you can barter and trade? It sounds, again, very preppery.
Sounds
right?
super dark. I'll be honest.
But again, we're talking about hedging, and we're not saying to do all of that. We're just saying to have a plan in place, because you can't be at a point where all of a sudden things shift and then you're standing there processing the information. So if you plan ahead and you have a good diversified portfolio, you make sure that you have some hard assets, that you change your behaviors with technology, that you just kind of live more consciously, that if this is to happen sooner versus later, that you will be prepared and that you can hang on to your wealth. Because, Josh, they want you to own nothing, but I want you to own everything.
So do you think, just for example, that having a podcast where you talk shit about all those people and then having somebody who writes a book that talks shit about all those people probably puts you in a higher danger level?
I kind of opened the book with social credit and, the things that they've tried to do, against Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle and whatnot. And so maybe you're safe, but I'm probably not. Some people are insular and you have those connections and you're important enough to your people where they're like, we're going to protect you. And there's like people they just want to throw under the bus. So I'm probably going under the bus.
Well, you are a welcome part of the family here, Carol Roth. Listen.
I'll take refuge. I'm now joined part of the community, and our next podcast will have to be like a prepper circle and figure out what it is that we're all good at, so that we can make sure that during periods of chaos that we have the ability to trade and sustain ourselves.
Well,
again, simple things like if you have an opportunity to like stockpile some medicine, like if you have a life-saving medicine, like, I'm not telling you how to do it because I don't want to break any laws, but just find a way to see if you can get some extra and not be going, month to month on that.
When it comes, Carol, Duncan is well prepared. Dunkin's, we're all going to Dunkin's. So I appreciate it.
I love it.
Listen, this is You Will Own Nothing is by the incredible Carol Roth. Believe it or not, despite our discussion today, she's a hell of a lot of fun at cocktail parties. Every one of her friends tells me she's the funniest person they know. So thank you for joining us.
You didn't mention that I did this in my Duke and Duke Commodities Brokers t-shirt, which if you go to LinkedIn, I have changed my work experience to say that I work at Duke and Duke, and all of my things like, I do research on frozen concentrated orange juice. I try to get the machines turned back on, although unsuccessfully. I do all these duties for $1. So this is actually what my LinkedIn profile says.
I love it. Endicott Steel. We're all getting into it.
Exactly.
I love it. Carol Roth, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, very interesting. And, she really makes you think.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to go buy canned food yet, but
I already have plenty. Don't you worry.
I reminded her. I reminded her where we're going.
I've got the gasoline. It is not spoiled. And I've got the old-timey truck, all gassed up, ready to go to the bunker. None of you are invited.
Just wait till a band of 15 gunmen come and take your entire canned food stash.
Look, dude,
and that band is us.
I've seen the road. I'm prepared.
I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode, gentlemen. Thank you so much to Carol, and thank you so much to our listeners. Again, if you have not, find us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, and check out all the stuff we have there. So until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Thursday. Stay ruthless.